Coming up on Telling the Odds, Obi Wan Kenobi Chapter 6 has just aired. The show is done, and we are going to review the whole thing right now for you guys. We back, baby. What time is it, 3PO?
It is time for Telling the Odds.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of
Sorry, that was a terrible soundbite mix. I was trying to do a hello there in time with the intro and your intro as well.
Oh, good,
Hang on, Hang on, everyone silent.
Ready?
Hello there.
There we go.
Yeah, boom,
okay. Yeah. We back, guys. How's it going?
Yes, it's been, not an insignificant break, but
It's been a minute.
We're
Been a
back
minute.
and we are very excited to do right back into Star Wars because
Absolutely.
we've been missing it. Well, I mean, we haven't been missing it in terms of we've been watching Star Wars, but we've missed talking about it. It's
We
our
have.
passion,
We're in a bit of a new setup. We've got some cool new props, some set decoration
Yeah,
here.
things have changed.
I recently had my 21st birthday, and this was a very generous gift from Michael and a few more of our friends.
Yes. I
it
recently
didn't-
had a 21st birthday in which this was given to us.
Yes, this is. Let's show the people what this is,
We
Michael.
love our Star Wars props
Yes,
here.
this is Michael and I make an effort to kind of always handcraft gifts to one another when Christmases or birthdays roll around. Michael very generously gifted me the Big Kazoo
Big Kazoo.
out of Play-Doh on air. That is on YouTube because
My best
during
attempt, yeah.
it was during our trivia match.
And Jack completely just like one-ups and goes,
What is this,
here's
Michael?
this is an accurate recreation printed in ABS plastic of Terrace Nube's top of his walking stick, also known as his lightsaber hilt.
Yes.
It is fantastic.
Remainder of the cane sold separately.
Yeah, exactly.
When I say sold separately, I would involve modeling it from scratch.
You did a fantastic
We kind of
job.
I kind of painted it, and it was. I had a great time making this. It was a lot of fun.
I'm very proud to own it, Jack, because it make an excellent addition to my collection.
I'm very happy you like it. This is my saber that I have that I also have. It's not handcrafted, but it's Luke's. It's the ones they give out at Galaxy's Edge. I've had that for a little while now. We've got Kylo Ren and Boba Fett and BB-8 and Mando Ahsoka down there. So
fun little setup we have, but we do faffing around. We're here for a reason. We're here to talk about the
Kenobi.
As you were saying to me earlier, hello there. Presumably the biggest Star Wars TV show on Disney Plus, if ever.
One of it's probably the most anticipated thing in Star Wars material since probably The Force Awakens, honestly.
I think
it's
so.
definitely the most hyped I've been for a Star Wars project since Force Awakens.
Certainly with our generation, where there's just been this huge resurgence of prequel love, and this is the big continuation. Ewan McGregor's back,
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Because
Hayden Christensen back,
Yep.
Darth Vader.
Because the people who were kids when the prequels came out are our age now.
Yeah.
So we're kind of...
and older.
Exactly. Because the thing is that the people who are our age in Star Wars in the Star Wars community kind of have the strongest voices,
definitely, though.
Yeah, people who are like in their 20s like we are. So, and those people in today's day and age are people who grew up with the prequels and were kids when the prequels came out, which is why they're having such a resurgence. So for all we know, in another 20 years, the sequels could be... revered as the prequels are now.
That will be interesting to watch. Although it's funny, as
when we're 40, like
as wild as it
we're like
seems.
nephews and nieces or kids, I guess. We're just like, oh my god, I love Rise of Skywalker. I'm like, you're not my son.
That is, very interesting. Because I swear there was definitely that reaction when at least Phantom Menace and certainly Attack of the Clones came out of just complete, like at first kind of like, are they good? And then just betrayal of like almost everyone universally thought they were just nowhere near as good in quality, and it just took a while for them to receive the love that they have now. And
Absolutely.
it's, as much as it seems impossible to think that an 8-year-old or 20-year-old would be like, oh yeah, I love Rise of Skywalker, that's my favorite one growing up. I'm like,
Yep.
what? But
I know.
might be possible.
And regardless of how they were received, whether this was 15 years ago or now, I think everyone's always collectively agreed that Ewan McGregor was the best part of the prequels, which is
Yeah,
why the Obi Wan Kenobi series was so anticipated. And when those trailers came out, oh my god, I was floored.
It was like the biggest like rumored speculation.
We're losing shit. Did that just was that the lightsaber?
It was the lightsaber. It's all right.
That's okay.
We're all good.
We'll fix that.
We're still flying half a ship at least. So, yeah.
Not to worry, we are still flying half the ship.
Exactly. So
Hello there.
you just got to try and whip that out every second.
We're going to have to update this.
We do.
With the new... we'll get to that shortly.
Spoilers, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, no, what I was saying is but leading up to it, there was this huge idea of like, oh, is there going to be a Kenobi movie leading up to it? And then
It was originally a movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then they announced Kenobi show, and it was like 4 years off or whatever. I'm like, I'm so excited for that. And like always leading up to it, we always kept saying, what are our most anticipated shows? Well, Kenobi, that was always our number one.
That was always the thing that I was most looking forward to.
Exactly. And so it's here. It's arrived, and it's all dropped.
It's all dropped. It's done. We figured we'd wait until episode 6 was done for us to really delve deep into it.
Give us a clear mind, because I do think our opinions have definitely shifted as it goes. And obviously upon rewatch, we'll probably have a new perspective again. But I do think now that we've seen all of it, we can give a good consensus of how we thought it went. So.
Exactly. All right, so let's just get into it. Okay, so look, we'll just start with episode 1, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think that episode 1 was okay, we'll just give our overall thoughts on the show first of all.
I think so, yeah. Because is it going to be spoiler, non-spoiler? Should we start
spoilers.
non-spoiler?
Spoilers, let's just clarify that. Yeah, spoilers ahead, by the way. We're going to be delving deep into this show.
I think brief, quick non-spoiler. If you love the prequels, obviously if you love the prequels, go into it. But if you liked part of the prequels, specifically the part with Obi-Wan, played by Ewan McGregor, and how it went with Anakin, this continues that story in an interesting way that I think, while maybe in some parts stumbles a bit, overall has a really fun storyline that gives everything fans wanted, I assume, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So-
my overall thoughts on the show is that when it first started, I wasn't sure that the storyline that they were going with and what we were essentially going to be given in the 6 episodes, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. All right, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, and it did make me a bit apprehensive going into it, and especially after the first episode, because the first episode is a lot of setup. It's kind of establishing Obi-Wan.
It does start quite slow.
Where he is, and then episode 2 really expands on the story that they're telling. But I think that the story that they went with turned out really well. It did definitely have its ebbs and flows, and there are definitely some parts of the show that I didn't like. That moved quite slowly, and there were parts of this story that as far as how it was structured and how it was spaced out over these, let's say 6 hours, that it wasn't an hour each.
It was a bit of a shorter show, but I think it worked with it. I think.
Yeah, there were parts of it that seemed somewhat superfluous to me, especially towards the middle, but it had an amazing ending. This show, especially in like the last 2 episodes, and you guys, if you're watching this podcast,
You've almost definitely seen
seen it
we
already.
do recommend giving it a watch beforehand, watching this, and
Exactly.
and creating your what's it called? Having your own opinions after it.
I think that
definitely a good
episodes 5 and 6 of this show, as far as quality, as far as storytelling, as far as acting, all across the board, direction, what have you, it's some of the best Star Wars that we've seen since. First season of Mando, I'd say it's up there with the likes of the best episodes of The Mandalorian. I think it's some of the greatest material that we've gotten in Star Wars so far. Ewan McGregor, a legend. He's so good as this character. I cannot fault his performance in this show whatsoever. He goes immediately back into the Obi-Wan Revenge of this.
To him that I liked, because it wasn't just, this isn't the exact place we see him at the end of Revenge of the Sith. Like, it's the direction he's heading, but he's I don't want to jump into spoilers too much, but basically, should we just jump into episode 1?
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Spoilers
Spoilers
ahead.
ahead.
Those are
Yeah.
our non-spoiler thoughts. Let's get deep into it.
So
now.
immediately we jump into him 10 years later, or
10 years later.
So he's been on Tatooine. He is pretty much defeated man. Like, he's given up hope of the Jedi. He's here just to look after Luke. This is not the Obi-Wan that we knew from the prequels.
Yeah.
And it's also not the Obi-Wan that we know by the time of A New Hope. So clearly there's going to be some growth in here, which I like the idea of.
I was very curious how it would be perceived, because in a lot of ways, Obi-Wan at the start of this show is in the exact same spot that Luke is in The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like Luke's outlook in The Last Jedi because they don't feel it's earned.
Yeah.
All right. We're not going to get into Last Jedi right now.
This is
but
not that podcast
no.
episode.
But I feel like the reasons for Obi-Wan's kind of just complete defeat, he has no kind of he doesn't have a lot of hope left.
Yep.
Was completely founded because of
Yeah.
what happened in episode 3, and
the whole Jedi Order was destroyed and shaken, and his apprentice.
the only family he ever knew,
Exactly.
and that's why when that first Jedi comes along, we never really know, we never learn his name. But that guy who was in the saloon in Tatooine that gets chased by the Inquisitors and eventually dies, Obi-Wan tells him to go bury his lightsaber in the desert, go find a new life. I'm not going to help you because we can't be helping each other, otherwise we'll draw too much attention.
And speaking of that original scene, that's the first scene where we got to see the Inquisitors, who are secondary antagonists in the shows, if like Vader's the primary one later on.
Yep.
So obviously we have seeing again the third brother? One of them. We saw him in Rebels, I'm pretty sure.
Is it the seventh? No,
Actually, it might be
fifth
higher.
brother.
Fifth brother, that's
brother.
it.
Yeah.
As well as the Grand Inquisitor. And the Grand Inquisitor is very different from as we see him in Rebels. However, at first, I did not like the design, and the voice is very different. It only took me a couple of bit scenes with him to realize he won me over.
It grew on me.
I do think it's different, but he's got like a presence to him, which I definitely like. So
Yeah,
Grand
I think
Inquisitor,
that-
I did enjoy.
I think that Rupert is it Rupert Fiend or Rupert Friend? I'm not sure, but the actor who played him, I think he did. I think he did really well. It didn't bother me that it wasn't Jason Isaacs doing the voice.
I think it's more just like it just looks very different from how Power have been shown in the past.
That's the thing that really bothered us when that first trailer showed up. But again, it's not something that I like judge the show on. Like
it's not the most important thing. As long as they get the essence of like the characters and the storytelling the
Exactly.
best, that's the most important.
I don't care about the
his-
nitpicky things.
His role in the story as it is, which he's not in it too much, I feel like he had an imposing figure to him. But
And if it serves the story, and if it serves the story and is executed properly, and pays homage to what that character means in canon, I don't really mind about the nitpicks, which also relates to something else towards the end of the show that we'll get into
We will
shortly.
get to that, yeah.
Yeah. Again, as far as nitpicking, but doesn't really matter because of what it does for the story and the show.
But other thing is Reva? Is it Reva?
Reva, I think.
Reva, yeah.
Reva.
So who's a new character, a new Jedi.
Third
She is
sister,
third sister,
yeah.
yes. And so we have a differing opinion about her to begin with, I believe. So
Yeah.
because I quite like her in the show. I feel like she is an interesting fresh air for like a protagonist in terms of like how driven she is to like fighting her goals and kind of like. So we're shown to begin with that she is obsessed with finding Obi-Wan specifically. And we learn backstory-wise why that is later on.
Yeah,
But
because I remember one of the first things that you hear about, when they discuss Kenobi, a fifth brother and Reva, when he says, "What do you think you will gain by capturing him?" and she says, "What I'm owed," which brought up this idea. Okay, she has some kind of connection or affiliation to Obi-Wan and his part in possibly Order 66 and the Fall of the Jedi that she feels she wants revenge for.
yeah, because they've often kept the origins of the Inquisitors quite vague, with the exception of Grand Inquisitor, who we know was a Jedi Temple Guardian, I believe. But like other ones, I'm not too sure.
You know what I was thinking about the other day when I was just when we were doing
Tangent number one, let's go.
I watched episode 5 again. Tangent
Yeah.
number 1. Watching episode 5, and we were getting on the flashes back to Order 66.
Yes.
During Order 66 and the raid on the Jedi Temple, where were the Temple guards?
They presumably were like right at the start. They probably got like destroyed by the 501st, right?
Sure, yeah,
I
guess.
feel like if their job is to guard the Jedi Temple, they were probably out the front guarding the Jedi Temple. And if they made it that far into the Jedi Temple,
there's probably
they didn't do very well.
There's probably some Wikipedia explanation as to how as to what they did, or in which case didn't
in fact,
do, because obviously they failed.
Yeah, you know what we missed? If we're doing episode 1, the cold open to this show is a flashback to Order 66.
It is.
With the Jedi younglings.
It is. And a lot of people, and they were right about this, is that they thought that the youngling who says run was Reva, and it was.
Yeah.
Right, which is great. So, that kind of speaks to the intelligence of the audience and
Definitely.
yeah, and the funny thing is when that scene was first shown up, I thought that we were setting up for I thought this was going to be the story. I thought that when they said we run, I thought that set of younglings was going to be like I thought the story was going to be, okay, Obi-Wan has to protect this group of children.
Right.
I thought that this was going to be kind of like a, kind of like the Gathering arc in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
There's a small band of youngling Jedi that Obi-Wan has to protect.
I mean, it could have been, but like they would have had to have survived quite a while, because we know pretty much what happens to Obi-Wan directly after Order 66. He fights Anakin, then he like goes to the place where Luke and Leia are born, then he goes to Tatooine. Like they would have to make their way to Tatooine, which I mean,
Exactly.
did eventually.
Because you're so overcome by the fact that that a show you love is starting, and the fact that we're seeing Order 66, that anything goes through your mind. And I remember that being something that kind of flashed through my head, but obviously didn't get panned out. I did love seeing more of Order 66. I loved seeing Clone Wars. I loved seeing clones. Actually, physical clones.
Yeah, they look good.
Because they're all CG in Revenge of the Sith.
That's the thing about the clones. Is
There's
the
not
helmets.
a single live action clone in the prequels.
Helmets are way too small in the prequels.
Yeah.
They're just, you can't fit a human head in there.
No, absolutely not.
So-
So the fact that they're all actually people in suits in this one was,
Yeah.
I appreciated that, and it was very, very well done, and I love the way it was shot. That also brings us to a kind of cool bit in episode 2 when you see a homeless 501st clone.
There were lots of little tidbits and references to the prequel fans that you love. Like it was, it's interesting. It was mostly a story talking about continuing Revenge of the Sith, but almost every like hint and reference I feel like was setting up for the original trilogy, which is the thing we were mentioning about like. How
but a lot of it had to do with the fallout as well from the prequels, and that's why we saw that clone veteran, that homeless clone veteran, and that's why
the purpose of the show was definitely to set up the character of Obi-Wan from how we see him in Revenge of the Sith to how we see him in A New Hope. And so varying degrees ways of doing that, but
and that definitely speaks to like the tragic. Again, we know how tragic the story of the clones is that they died for nothing essentially, but that also lends itself to the fact that that idea of the clones were kept in circulation for a little while. Vader's fist to the 501st, they would have been kept around for a while.
Yeah, but
and this is something
not the longest because he was a 501st member.
Exactly, this is something that's being elaborated on in Bad Batch, and probably more so in season 2, is how the clones were kept around for a little while, and then they slowly started doing conscripted soldiers, and that's how they assembled the Imperial Navy. And then slowly but surely, all the clones were just phased out, and you can assume that that's what happened to this clone. One day he was just told to pack up his shit and go on.
As soon as they don't serve a purpose to the Empire, then they
just get discarded. Yeah, and that's why we see this veteran clone saying, please help me get a meal. And that's
definitely a tragedy to the clones in that sense.
Exactly.
Like a tragedy of how they were used as weapons and then how they were discarded.
Yeah. And seeing Tamara Morrison again, that was pretty cool.
Exactly. It's good always seeing him as
I really hope we see him as Rex in Ahsoka.
You'd hope so. I mean, because we've seen him in Boba Fett, so he's clearly happy to come back.
Yeah.
I just wonder, because he's played Jango Fett, who's basically the exact same character as Boba Fett. Well, like to a varying degree, they're very similar.
Yeah.
But Rex is a very different character to Boba Fett. Like, why are we talking about Ahsoka here? We're like speculating a bit, but
we talked about Tamara Morrison. This is what we do. We get on tangents here. Remember?
But like and we know Rex so much as how D. Bradley Baker plays him. I do wonder whether Tamara Morrison would be able to do it. Like as
Tamara
Rex
Morrison's a very good actor. So
I think he would do it. But I
don't put it past him.
In the same way that, because I really like how Ahsoka was in Mandalorian. I think Rosario Dawson's doing a good job.
Yep.
I don't know if it felt like the same character yet. Like,
no, I don't think so. But I just know that we know that Ahsoka and Rex's stories are so tied together, and they're such good friends, and they've been there for each other. So I imagine that if we wanted to tell more of Ahsoka's story, someone like Dave Filoni, who's in charge of the show, would feel that it would be in the show's best interest to have Rex be involved.
Yeah, if there's any opportunity for him,
and
to
Rex
come
would be
back,
very old by that time.
It would be Ahsoka. Because it's post Return of the Jedi, which
post Rebels and post Return of the Jedi, so he'd be getting very old.
He would be.
But that's the thing, is that he appears older, but technically Ahsoka is older than him.
Yeah,
which is odd because of
he ages twice as fast.
Exactly. Yeah, that's an odd thing. But anyway, back to Obi-Wan.
We do. Probably, yes. So a major thing we probably have to dress up. Obviously, there's like scenes with him and Owen, which is interesting on Tatooine.
I did love the whole Skyhopper thing.
That was
great.
Fun little opening scene to that. But the big setup, have the story of what's been happening is we see Leia in this as a 10-year-old.
I remember the second. I remember the second that we cut to Alderaan in that first episode. And I realized that it was going to involve Leia. I'm like, oh shit, okay, cool.
Now, we did know that they had cast a young, we almost definitely guessed it was a young Leia and a young Luke prior to this.
I remember us discussing that report about the fact that the Obi-Wan series was casting for a young boy and young woman actress. So that ended up being true.
Exactly. But it's interesting because I had assumed going into that if we were going to see them, it would definitely be a small cameo from both. Or if we did, presumably more of Luke. But Leia is probably the second biggest character, if not counting Vader as like an antagonist. She's like the second biggest protagonist in the show. Like she is in it like most episodes for quite significant time.
And again, I really needed to be sold on why Leia needed to be a part of this story. I did. I absolutely felt that they did it justice. And the young actress playing Leia, she's
fantastic job.
Such an incredible actress.
If we've had problems with younger actors coming back, trying to play characters we're familiar with, where it just didn't quite work, this did not have that problem at all. I was 100% convinced it was a 10-year-old Leia.
100%. And I feel terrible that I can't remember her name. It's Vivian. Her first name is Vivian something. That's the actress's name.
Better than me. I don't know.
Yeah, she did an amazing job. I feel like her relationship with Obi-Wan in this show it's the driving force. If you don't believe in that relationship and if you're not sold on it, the show doesn't work. And they played so well off each other. I think their
not that-
relationship was slowly grown over time. You know, she's very mistrusting of him at the start when she's like, you know,
exactly.
she tries to run away from him, and by the end of the show, it's like he's like a second father to her.
Exactly.
A third father, I guess.
And not that every scene with her was like perfect, but I definitely agree that some of the strongest parts of the show were her and Obi-Wan. I did think like there were some goofy moments, like the chase scene on Alderaan.
That was something I could not get behind in that first episode.
A goofy bit where like she's like running away from them, and she like runs over like a log, and the guy's like, "Oh no,
I can't get past this log.
I can't get past the log."
There's a part where he literally runs in. He literally runs into a branch. He runs into a branch. He's like, "Oh, I can't get through this branch."
Yeah. So I did notice that a little bit.
That was really stupid. And the best part about that episode, I'd say, is again going back to Obi-Wan's kind of reluctance to be a part of that world at all.
Yeah.
Is the fact that he tells them no. Essentially, he says, "No, I'm sorry. Find someone else.
He is very hesitant to save Leia.
It's been 10 years. I'm not who I used to be," is what he says. So, and then he kind of goes about his day. And it's only until Bail Organa shows up on Tatooine that he agrees to do this. He says, "One last fight." He says, you know,
which is interesting because obviously he's here to protect Luke because he views that Luke will be what will be able to save the galaxy.
He says, "I can't leave the boy."
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know. Because I think it's pretty, you know, kind of well established that, you know, both Bail and Obi-Wan think that Luke and Leia will definitely have a part to play in whatever comes next for the galaxy.
Exactly.
But Obi-Wan knows that it's his job to protect Luke. All right. It's the Organa's responsibility to protect Leia.
Yeah.
That's why he said,
"I'm keeping my end. You're not keeping yours."
Exactly. That's why he said, you know, "My duty is to the boy. I can't leave him," you know, and that's what I liked. And that's why, look, I remember us discussing many months ago about the idea that I didn't want Obi-Wan to spend a lot of time off of Tatooine.
Right.
Because of the fact that I felt like that would be detracting from this mission that he is so driven by that I don't think that you could really sell it and kind of work it into the story that has already been established. I don't think you could do that seamlessly by having him leave.
I did notice.
And obviously he spends the entire time off of Tatooine.
Pretty much.
But I quickly came to terms with it for a few main reasons, because in hindsight, he spent 19 years on Tatooine, and he's gone for like
a week
in this episode, so it's fine. I honestly don't mind it. You know, he was definitely getting. He was kind of giving off a feeling, especially in like episode 5 territory, where he was definitely feeling like he's been away too long. So I liked the fact that, I didn't mind that he was away from Tatooine as long as it felt like there were consequences for that decision.
Definitely.
Which there were, because he knew that what he was doing was risky.
Yep.
And we obviously end up finding out that Reva followed, went to Tatooine in the end.
Exactly.
Which is why, you know, that decision to leave has consequences. And that's what I wanted to see. As long as his choice that I had to be sold on, you know, made sense for the story and was executed properly as far as the consequences that come with it, I was more than happy with the way the show went with it.
And that was something I noticed a little bit about, or not necessarily noticed, it was just something going into it, is this is a problem that a lot of prequel things have had with Star Wars. In fact, prequel things in general is you have characters that you know where they end up and you know what they're doing, especially with this show where we have a show right before where it is and a show right where after, and we have dialogue between major characters explaining the last things they did and whatnot.
Exactly.
They had to be very careful and tiptoe around to a certain degree what they did in this show. And some of the time I think worked perfectly fine. Some of the times it felt a little bit like,
well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the one
Yeah.
thing that I was talking to you about just before we started taping, which is the whole, you know, so Luke and Obi-Wan, Leia and Obi-Wan had a very kind of strong bond in this show.
Yeah.
All right. And initially she only knows him as Ben.
Yes.
All right. Which I liked, because I
liked too. I really liked how they started. That he would explain himself as Ben, and
he only ever mentions himself as Ben.
You could possibly explain it as it's like him just trying to disguise himself. But I personally much prefer the explanation of this is who he is now. He's Ben Kenobi. He stays as being Obi-Wan, as a Jedi Knight, a hero of the Clone Wars has passed. That's not who he is anymore. So I did like that, but so you were saying.
So he only ever introduces himself to Leia as Ben, which made sense because in episode 4, when Leia sends that transmission, General Kenobi, help me Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. Years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars and that kind of thing.
And clearly, people don't know that one Kenobi is the same, because Luke's like, I wonder if they're meaning old Ben. Definitely implying that the same.
But essentially, what that means is that because Leia only knew him as Ben, and she gets sent out to find this Obi-Wan person by her father in episode 4, it stood to reason that you could make it believable that Leia honestly thinks that those are two different people. All right, and that made sense, because if she thought that they were the same person, that
did make sense.
Yeah, if she knew that they were the same person, that transmission would have gone, General Kenobi, years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars. Also, we hung out that one time where I almost got kidnapped and almost died.
I mean, at this point, basically, you were a major father figure for my childhood, and really helped me grow emotionally. But
Exactly. So initially, because that wasn't the case,
Yeah.
I didn't mind it. But in episode 4, Reva refers to Ben as Obi-Wan right in Leia's presence, right? And as you said, their relationship continues to grow, and they get so close by the end of the show.
And her iconic holster that that is so crucial to her character was given to him.
So the fact that it seems as though Obi-Wan Kenobi, this idea of Obi-Wan Kenobi, feels like such a stranger to her in episode 4. It doesn't really line up for me, unfortunately. No. The only thing that I do like is, obviously, she knows of Ben and Obi-Wan and Kenobi, that whole thing. She knows that person is who he is. So that explains why when Luke comes into her cell in episode 4, I got your R2 unit, I'm here with Ben Kenobi. Ben Kenobi, where is he?
Yeah, exactly.
So that makes sense, all right? Because she knows who that person is, and she immediately rushes off because she knows that she's going to be safe in that man's company, all right? So that part of it, great, all right? Because if anything, this show actually emphasizes that little moment, all right? It makes more sense as to why she reacts so emphatically when she realizes that Ben Kenobi has come to save her.
Does it make a little bit less sense when Luke's really sad that Ben's passed, but she's like, "Oh, I'll comfort you, Luke, because you clearly knew Ben Kenobi well, whereas I didn't as well."
That's another thing, So it's the transmission at the start, the fact that he almost appears as a complete stranger to her, as far as how she refers to him and how she addresses him. And that part after he dies, when Leia's consoling Luke, she should be in hysterics. They were very close in this show.
It's hard. I do think with the Obi-Wan Kenobi one caveat, because the way she knows Ben is he is clearly old and like kind of struggling a bit and like on the run and trying to run kind of as she sees him kind of running from his past, whereas when she says to him, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi," like she says, "Years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars," she's like, you could maybe read it as like she's trying to be like, "We need you again, Obi-Wan, we need like the Jedi that was in the past," and like that's why Obi-Wan, because that's
a good point. If
she knows,
and also she's an Imperial senator by that time, so she would have tried to be as maybe as formal as possible.
Exactly.
That's why she mentions things like her father and the Clone Wars. She wouldn't have delved into that one thing that happened.
Plus, they haven't met in 9 years. So like, if you knew someone when you were 10 years old, and then now you're 19 or whatever it is, you're not going to be like, "Hey, we haven't talked in 9 years, but we need to really desperately."
That's true. Like,
it was a while ago that you saved me, but we do need your help right now.
Yeah, we're both 21 now. If you ask me to go find someone who saved my life at the age of 12,
like you remember them,
and I hung out with for like a week,
but you're not really.
I'd remember them, but I wouldn't have like vivid memories of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's a good point. Yeah, that's true.
I do think that there is this problem of like how everything they do, there's all these rules around. Does it affect it in A New Hope? And I don't think that what I do think is that it didn't necessarily stay to them too strictly that it ruined the show.
Yeah.
Like if it was just purely like every single thing it does was following those rules where it just was boring, and like maybe an example I would give is like in Clone Wars, they've got the idea that Anakin never meets Grievous. And so
that's
because of this, it's quite goofy how commonly when Grievous is there, how Anakin keeps just missing or not meeting Grievous.
There's that episode.
His Padawan meets him, Obi-Wan meets him, everyone keeps running into Grievous, and Anakin never
once meets him. And I do appreciate the fact that they did that for the sake of canon.
It's great,
but
it's
again,
also hilarious.
It's so silly that Anakin was revered as far as canon goes, and as far as in-universe. Like, there's a lot of like in-universe explanations that Anakin was talked about on the HoloNet daily. The General Anakin Skywalker.
He was basically the most famous.
He was the poster boy of the Clone Wars.
Exactly.
Right? He was. If in the Marvel universe, he was Captain America in World War II. He was like I need you person.
Exactly.
He was the Uncle Sam. All right, everyone knew who he was. Right. So the fact that he never met the leader of the Separatist army, that is again, funny. It's stupid. And
also does actually have a problem with that, where
there are two instances where it's funniest. Okay, the episode where they save Eth Koth. All right, Grievous Intrigue in season 2. They are literally one hallway away from each other.
They never meet.
And the even better one. All right, wait for this, season 4 on season 4 in on Naboo. You remember when the Gungans take down Grievous?
Yes.
Right? And Anakin gets captured by Dooku, right? And they do that exchange, right? They literally pass each other, but they're both unconscious.
Oh, really?
That's the excuse. So they,
fantastic.
because they have that last scene in that show,
Yeah.
in that episode, I mean, where they're doing the prisoner exchange,
yeah.
right? So they literally cross each other. They are centimeters away from each other, but they're both unconscious,
That's wild.
so they don't see each other. That's my favorite explanation for why they don't meet until episode 3.
It's very good. So there is that problem with that, and similarly also the idea that like with the Count Dooku
Yeah.
in Revenge of the Sith, how he talks to Anakin, and Anakin's like, "Oh, last time we met, my powers have doubled." They met like a week ago
On Obadiah. Yeah.
Has he doubled since then?
I know.
Like there are these.
They met like a
issues.
week ago. That's my favorite part.
And so you are always going to have, especially with how prominent Vader is in this show, you are going to run into those issues with Obi-Wan and Vader. However, I did like it never got in the way of the story. They were still able to tell the story of Vader is clearly seeking for Obi-Wan. This is his failure as a Sith.
Yep.
Obi-Wan doesn't think Vader's alive, realizes it's Anakin, and is shaken by it. And their interactions with the 2 or 3 times they meet is like, it's important. It's what the essence of this show really is.
That was my favorite part of episode 2 specifically, because we talked about episode 1. Let's get into episode 2. You know, my favorite part was Obi-Wan's reaction to realizing that Anakin is alive, and the main thing that people thought is, how does Reva know that Darth
I thought
Vader?
that immediately as well.
How does she know that Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker are the same person?
Yep.
She also, quote unquote, kills the Grand Inquisitor. All right. Yeah. As soon as that happened, I was like, rebels.
Yeah, I admit, like, so either he's coming back or they've done another Orn Fritar.
Honestly, oh god, that's true. You know what I honestly thought was going to happen
Yeah.
is that I thought that they
Kill.
I honestly thought that wasn't the Grand Inquisitor.
Yeah,
And that-
for a second I'm like, okay,
that-
there were just 2 power and Grand
No, that's what I was going
Inquisitors.
to say. I thought that was their excuse
why
as
he
to
looks
why
like-
he doesn't look like a Padawan, because
Yeah.
he's not the Grand
just a
Inquisitor
different grey, bold guy.
From Rebels. But he is the same person,
fact-
and because Padawans have 2 stomachs.
Yeah, exactly.
And Rupert Fiend, I think, said this in an interview at one point, is that he only got stabbed through one of his stomachs,
Right.
So that's why he survived.
Which leads into why Reva survived.
Yeah, that's a whole.
She was also stabbed in the stomach. So maybe like
Stabbed in the stomach, you know, the lightsaber wounds get immediately cauterized. So
Yeah.
you can assume that it wasn't it wasn't a lethal shot. I don't know, but
who knows? Look, all this does, the fact that that Grand Inquisitor survived being stabbed in the stomach, and now Reva's being survived in the stomach, they really should have double checked that Qui-Gon survived being stabbed in the stomach before they cremated him in Phantom Menace, because clearly this has shown that they can survive this.
god, that's true.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not dead yet.
Guys, please, I'm not dead yet. Yeah, so
I'm getting better. Monty Python.
yeah,
Oh
it's
god,
just a flesh wound, exactly. Oh, so that
a
was
flesh wound.
yeah.
No, you're not. You'll be stone dead in a moment.
Star Wars has always had this problem of like what is and is not lethal. I mean, pretty much the biggest example all is like when Darth Maul gets cut in half and still makes it alive. So
Yeah.
it's not the most absurd thing we've seen, but yeah, it's that was an interesting bit where and clearly if the end, I mean, jumping a little bit ahead, but Reva is still alive by the end of it. So
Okay, so let's talk about Reva, because we were talking about the fact that we
Yes.
were slightly divided on her as far as our opinions.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't dislike her as much as a lot of other people did.
yeah, that was a really uncomfortable amount of
and because of the
backlash.
fact that, you know, in the first few episodes I didn't like her because we didn't know anything about her.
Right.
But I had faith that the show was going to show us that originally. So my kind of initial, you know, passiveness towards her character was kind of lessened by the fact that I knew we were going to get her backstory eventually.
Yeah.
But the fact that we don't get it until episode 5, that did weaken her character a bit for me. Yeah, it's because if we had gotten a little bit earlier, then I feel like I would have been invested with Reva a lot, like, you know, a long time before that. The problem with that is that explaining Reva's backstory it's very important to have done after a lot of other stuff has already
Yeah,
happened.
exactly.
Because of what it is, all right, and its emotional depth, all right. So I can understand completely why they had to wait until a little bit later in the show to reveal what she is, because it's so tied to Anakin and Obi-Wan. Because you
hinting
need,
it from the start, but obviously it wasn't explicit. Yeah.
because you need to show some stuff with Vader and Obi-Wan and a young Anakin and stuff like that to give context for her backstory.
Yeah.
All right. Because you can't give her backstory in episode 1.
No.
Because all the stuff with Obi-Wan and Anakin hasn't happened yet, and that's why it wouldn't be nearly as impactful, right? You need those Anakin and Obi-Wan flashbacks before you show the Reva flashbacks.
Yeah, the flashback with them, which was interesting.
Yeah.
I will. Before we get into that, I do say about Reva. I similar to what it said, but I feel like she was interesting to me from the start of like this antagonist who, yes, is working with the Inquisitors, but is very driven in her own goals. Is like it lent a lot into this idea of the dark side of like, we're all in the dark side together. However, give me an opportunity, I will stab you in the back to take your place. Like that was like really interesting. But then I loved the twist. Like, yes, she is clearly driven by hate, anger, revenge, but it's not purely out of like wanting to gain like power. It's about revenge. Like we learn this idea that she was a youngling, one of the younglings that survived, and that she's been doing this just to get close to Vader. And I don't know, I really thought she was actually really interesting of a character, and once
they give her backstory, she was great. I thought she was
definitely
great.
in how Obi-Wan, especially in episode 5, kind of used her. Like, wait, when he leaves,
I think he kind of unintentionally used her.
Dude, he totally was like, oh, the plan was we're going to defeat Vader together, right? Yeah, definitely. And then just sneaks off and hops in the like plane, hoping that she'll slow her down or something. I was so convinced. I'm like, is he not going to show up and help her fight Vader? Like, he's just going to leave.
I'll also say that I thought Moses Ingram, who played Reva,
fantastic,
fantastic. I think that because we saw. Have you seen The Queen's Gambit?
I have.
Yeah, she's fantastic in that show. So the fact that she was going to appear in this was always exciting to me.
Yeah.
And
casting across the board was excellent. She was both new characters and returning.
I thought she was fantastic in this show, especially the part where she's explaining her backstory, when she's talking about the fact that, she thought that Anakin was there to help her, and then he just gutted her friends. And then when she's talking, across that door to Obi-Wan about the fact that she had to hide amongst her friends' bodies and watch them and feel them go cold before she could run or do whatever. That was not only brutal, a brutal backstory, but it also makes her an incredibly tragic character.
Yeah.
Because I honestly thought that, I thought that she was dying when she got stabbed.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought that oh my God, it's such a tragic character that she came all this way to try and avenge her friends and avenge what happened to her. And only to fail miserably and to die just how they did. Obviously, she didn't die. I honestly feel like
it probably would have been more interesting if they did do it.
I feel like it would have served the story a bit better if Reva had died. Yeah.
But,
because,
I feel like, they definitely want to have room to tell new stories with new characters. And so there weren't many deaths in the show.
Oh boy, Reva, a Star Wars story?
Yeah, exactly. Something it is. And look, maybe we'll see her again, maybe we won't, but I definitely think she was one of the better additions to the show, and mostly in a show where I was mostly hoping for things we had not already seen, but continuations of things we were familiar with. I did like her new addition to the show. So
yep. So we talked about a returning character. Let's get into Vader. Let's get into Vader. Let's get into Hayden Christensen. He could not have been done better in this show. This is something. We can fault the show in certain spots, and we'll get into that shortly, but they could not have executed Vader better. He is menacing. He sounds amazing because
100%. Like, because Rogue One, where they got James Earl Jones back, he's like 90 something.
He sounds like he sounds like an 85-year-old Vader,
very, very old. And
right.
it's hard because he's the iconic voice, but he just can't do it anymore. And you were saying they used a voice. What was it called?
Yeah, so essentially they use the same AI program and software that they used to bring young Mark Hamill's voice back for Mando and Book of Boba Fett.
Which I did not like in those. It just didn't work.
Respeecher it's called. Where essentially you can take hours of someone speaking, and it can essentially be synthesized into any sentence you need, really, because you have the
AI technology is crazy.
It is. It's crazy. And the reason I don't think it worked as much for Mark Hamill is because that's just a... Vader's voice is already modulated.
It is. His works a lot better, like, because it's deeper. It works with the modulating sound because it is modulated. It's been turned up to the cool factor to 11. So,
but because Mark Hamill is just a dude and he has a normal voice like we do, the human ear
we're very receptive to it.
The human ear will always pick up inconsistencies. That's it's like the deep faking of Luke.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good it will get.
And it's getting real good.
It doesn't matter how good it will get. And in Book of Boba Fett it was great, I thought. We will always know that it's not real.
Yeah, exactly.
Because no one knows a human face better than a human.
Exactly.
Right? So we will know that it's not. I mean, obviously we know because we know that Mark Hamill's not that age anymore. But
yeah, that does play a factor. Even if there's a two differences, one like they're both exact same quality. If you know something's fake, it means you will notice the things that are obviously fake more than if you don't know if it's fake or not. When then you're just trying to work it out.
But I honestly believe that he showed me a deep fake version of just some random person.
Yeah.
Right. We'd still be able to tell because there's something up with this guy's face
To an extent. So there are artifacts to it, but like it also depends on how good you go and how much work is put into it. Because
it's like
technology is very.
Well, it's also like Tarkin.
How you do it is very.
I
important.
stand by the fact that Tarkin doesn't look that bad in Rogue One.
I think so, and as we've talked about in this past, especially when they just showed the reflection of him. Like if you use creative filmmaking to get around the weaknesses of AI, it can be flawed.
I thought that's all they were going to do because that's the very first thing you get of him, the thing in the reflection. I thought this is brilliant, and then he turned around.
Okay.
But I imagine that they used a similar program to bring Peter Cushing's voice back, and I remember.
I don't think they did. I thought it was just the actor who did it. I thought he just used his voice.
Is it really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't have that at the time. Because Peter Cushing wasn't an AI. That was like a full 3D recreation of his face.
It was, yeah.
Put onto the actor. I can't remember his name. He's in Harry Potter, I think. But I'm pretty sure he also did the voice for Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
Or not Peter Cushing, for Tarkin in Rogue One. But they've been continuing this idea of bringing back old characters with new actors. No, sorry, with the old actors digitally and whatnot. And yeah, normally mixed on it. Vader's voice, perfect.
Amazing. It was perfect. And
like
I got to say, and
scarily good.
we're going to get into, some more Hayden stuff as well. The flashback, right? With, them in Anakin.
One with them dueling?
Anakin Padawan era,
Yes.
right? I'm really glad that they didn't airbrush Hayden's face
Or
anything.
de-age him with,
Look, I know. Look, Hayden Christensen's in his his 40s, I think.
Yeah, probably.
And in that scene, he's supposed to be maybe 18.
Yeah.
Obviously, he doesn't look 18, but I feel like it would have been worse if they de-aged him because, like I said, we would have noticed and it would have felt unnatural to us, and it didn't bother me in the slightest.
I think it makes more sense because, obviously, it could have just been if they did have a perfect Hayden Christensen at that age to do it, then they could have just been a flashback. But the fact that it was him as Hayden Christensen is now, I felt it led more into leave of this is a flashback from Vader's mind of how Vader sees him. That was his age. This is how he is then. Obviously, it's a different thing, but he also
a good point.
He hasn't fully destroyed. There's always been hints of how he hasn't fully destroyed Anakin from him as a there. I mean, obviously he hasn't because Luke turns him at the end. But he clearly his weakness that he sees himself is his past, and so him seeing these flashbacks of Obi-Wan. A major motif of the show is Obi-Wan is his past. He needs to destroy his past, his failures. And I think seeing him as this age and Obi-Wan there in this flashback literally lent to this idea of this is Anakin's past. This is who he was and who he is now. And that's a difficulty for him. And I think it worked.
That's a very good point. And let's backtrack slightly back to episode 3. Let's talk about their first fight.
Yeah.
I think their first fight was very, very well done. And the fact
Vader throughout is brutal.
Especially episode 3. When he snaps that kid's neck, oh my God.
We've seen him be quite brutal in the famous Rogue One scene, but this is like a whole show of Vader going ham, doing just lightsabers.
He's just in that streak because he's trying to taunt. He's taunting Obi-Wan. He's trying to lure him out.
Yeah.
So he's just dragging fools. He snaps the kid's neck, like I said, and then obviously we get into that fight, and there's that amazing
force use is probably the most intimidating throughout this. Obviously, as we get to this, the part with the fire where he drags Obi-Wan through
Oh my God, that was so cool, but so brutal.
The final fight in episode 6, which we'll get to, brutal uses of the Force. So
it was amazing. So anyway, staying in episode 3, that first part where yes, the episode 6 fight, amazing. But the episode 3 fight might be one of my favorite moments from the show because for a very few, for a couple of reasons is. First of all, it's amazingly shot. There's that first shot where we cut away to Obi-Wan. He's kind of making his escape, and he's kind of running along that kind of dirt path, and then you just see that red saber ignite, and the music starts up, and you can see the fear in Obi-Wan's eyes, and it's a testament to how good Ewan is as an actor and as this character. It's so well done, and then he ignites his blue lightsaber, and we have that moment where he says, "What have you become?" And he says, "I am what you made me."
Yeah, exactly. There were lots of little callbacks.
Such a good line. I'd never felt more like it's kind of hard to explain, but I'd never really made the connection between Hayden and Vader before.
Yeah, there has always been a disconnect.
There's always been a disconnection. This was such a beautiful amalgamation of the prequels Anakin we knew and the Vader we knew in the original trilogy.
Definitely,
It really made them. It really made you believe that they're the same person. Obviously, they've always been the same person, but it's kind of been a harder sell from a story standpoint and a screenwriting standpoint. But it's never been clearer than this. It's never been more seamless than this, and it was so well done in this show.
It's also kind of weird to think Vader's in like his late 20s, 30s, or whatever.
Yeah, well, he's 20. No, he's let's see,
because he's 20 at the time of Attack of the Clones. So he'd be like
20. So he's 23. He's 33 in this show.
Which is funny.
Yeah, he's 33, and then he dies at like in his early 40s. Which is odd.
It's very odd. Yeah.
But that's but the reason that he's so kind of he's not nearly as agile in the original trilogy is because the mechanical implants that he has literally taken a toll on what natural body he has left, and those parts are growing old and that kind of thing, and that's why he's not nearly as skilled as we see him be in this show.
That and also the films were older, but
I know that's true. That's the canon explanation.
I love all those little things of like there was a lot of people explaining, like obviously we had similar conundrums of like, why doesn't Leia say, hey, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, remember that time you rescued me? And then everyone was just commenting on things because the film was made first. It's just always like, what do you mean, you idiot? Like, it's the film was made first. Like, no, we're talking about the canon.
No, something that takes place before that film had to be made before it, right?
Right.
There aren't such things as prequels. There's only continuous storytelling in this world. You're not allowed to make things that were made before other things.
Exactly. It's always funny doing the goofy things, but yeah.
And the other, obviously, the thing that you'll never really find an explanation for is why are they so, it's so choreographed and so skilled, and then they're like two old guys fiddling with walking sticks in episode 4. Only a master of evil Darth.
Especially after this episode because he's like kind of like struggling as a Jedi. He's a bit older, and then he gets like his big boost by the end of it, which is great. But then 9 years pass and boom, he's old man again.
Exactly.
So funny.
It's weird is because first of all, I did definitely like how they really made it clear that Obi-Wan is not the Obi-Wan we knew in episode 3 in Revenge of the Sith, because the episode 3 Obi-Wan gets his ass kicked.
Oh, I was like, they're just gonna kill Obi-Wan now. Like, even though we know he doesn't.
And it made complete sense. This guy's been living in the desert for 10 years. He's had to cut himself off from the Force in the same way that Luke did in The Last Jedi because he needs to protect himself.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Vader's like in his prime, like hunting Jedi, like fully embracing his dark side, his anger. Like, dude is like basically running half the galaxy, like, or running most of it with like behind Palpatine. So like,
because I found
there's a big difference in a level of power.
Because I found an amazing explanation for why he is the way he is in this episode. Because obviously there is a certain, part of having to being able to use the Force, especially at Darth Vader's level, is they can sense their feelings, they can kind of sense their thoughts in a way. They can't like literally read their minds, but they can get very thorough impressions of the state that they're in. All right. So not only in that fight does Obi-Wan have to cut himself off from the Force, not only does he have to bury his thoughts about Luke and Leia deep, right?
Exactly.
Because he cannot have Darth Vader get even the slightest inkling that his children survive.
I mean, that's what Vader does to Luke in Return of the Jedi. Like, he thinks for a second about his sister, and Vader's like,
"Oh, you've got a sister."
And if he lets that happen, not only does he lose the fight with Vader here, he loses the fight for the galaxy if Luke gets caught by Vader.
If Vader finds out that that his children survived,
exactly,
because he assumed that they were still born with Padme, that's it. So in that fight, Obi-Wan is having to cut himself off from the Force. He's having to bury his thoughts about Luke and Leia as deep as possible, and that in turn is affecting his lightsaber skills and his just ability to repel Vader. Because one of the greatest things, I can't remember who said it, I believe it was one of the filmmakers, it might have been George Lucas, I don't know, but something that was very well advocated in this show is that you don't try to win against Vader, you just try to survive. All right? Which is something
he's an unstoppable force.
Exactly. Which is something that I always liked about the idea of Darth Vader, is that he's just this unstoppable. He's the greatest villain in all of film history.
Except for episode 6, where he gets kind of.
Except for episode 6, we'll get to that. So
and if you count Darth Vader as being him in Revenge of the Sith, he also just kind of get cut in 4 different pieces. Or whatever.
Yes, that's true. Well, that's because of the thing, and we'll get into some reasons behind that. They kind of
Unstoppable
delve into
force
towards
that's
the end
been
of-
stopped twice. Well, I actually Luke defeats him as well, so there's 3 times it's been. Sorry, just
both by Obi-Wan, which is for a good reason that they explore in episode 6, which we'll get to shortly. But anyway, this kind of leads into episode 4.
Yeah.
Episode 4 of the show. Let's talk about the things that I didn't like, and most of the things that I didn't like are in this episode because
it's the weak part.
It's definitely the worst episode of the show. There's not a whole lot that I enjoyed in it. There are certain saving graces. It's really the first time where we get to see Obi-Wan use his lightsaber in a properly choreographed, well structured way when he's fighting off those stormtroopers in the hallway.
Yeah.
But a couple of reasons that I didn't really like the thing is because at the end of episode 3, he's burnt, right? He has those massive burns.
Yeah,
and, he's singed, and Tala gets him away. We'll touch on Tala in a little bit.
There is this new character's new idea of the idea of helping Jedi escape, and we haven't even talked about Kumail Nanjiani yet. But
we'll get into.
That's not the priority.
Exactly, we'll get into all that. So I was thinking, based on the fact that he was really injured, he got his ass kicked. He was going to have some time in like a back to tank, whatever, and that was going to. And
I'm glad they didn't do Book of Boba Fett, where it was just like in the back to tank. Like the whole show.
I thought that we were going to get something kind of Book of Boba Fett-ish, and I was hoping we would, because I thought what was going to happen is that Obi-Wan would have to have some time in the back to tank to really reel from his
maybe
brutal loss, and that would be a time where we get some flashbacks. All right, maybe to Clone Wars, maybe to what we ended up getting, and we'll touch on that soon. But he spends like 5 minutes in the back to tank at the start of the episode, and then we move on to something completely different. And I really didn't enjoy that, because
the pacing was a little bit
episodes
off.
1, 2, and 3 are very kind of.
They take their time to to show where we are, how the characters get in there, and then the adventures.
And then episodes 2 and 3 are very there's a lot going on.
Yeah, action.
They're very fast paced. They're very action driven. So I was kind of looking forward to the idea of possibly getting an episode 4 where Obi-Wan's he needs to have some time for self reflection.
Yeah.
And have this moment where he needs to,
especially after his confrontation with Vader. Yeah.
I thought that this was going to be the episode where we were going to have him kind of reconnect to the Force and reconnect to the Revenge of the Sith era Obi-Wan, and kind of revitalize himself as far as his need to do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
All right. And then that would lead us into where we find ourselves in episode 5 and 6, and that would appear very seamless. It's not what we got.
Not as
we
such.
got a pretty kind of boring rescue mission thing.
It did feel. I feel like we kind of mentioned a little bit like this idea of goofiness.
It felt like episode 2 again.
Yeah.
We did the whole rescue Leia thing. We don't need to do that. And there were, again, some goofy moments. That part where he sneaks out in a trench coat with this massive child underneath
look,
it.
I mean,
how did no one notice him?
Star Wars has never been a bastion of like logical situations and things.
They walk right past 2
But
Inquisitors.
It is, it just felt kind of.
It felt like a Home Alone movie.
A lot of the appeal from the show was kind of how seriously it took these characters.
Yeah.
And when you have kind of these goofy moments, it does kind of take away from the seriousness of it. Like in terms of, I mean, obviously you're going to have a real fear of like a problem of none of these characters except for like new characters are going to be able to die in any way. But they had to create stakes in some way. And I feel like when these goofy moments show up, they kind of do take away from some of the stakes of the bigger moments.
They do.
Like
For
obviously
sure.
there are moments where Anakin is like in a big fight or Obi-Wan barely survives. But if they're just going to in the next scene just like running around and like beating up a couple of stormtroopers, I don't know, it kind of takes away from it. But there were definitely some all right moments in the show that I like in that episode that I did quite like. Like as the original character, what's her name?
Tala?
Tala, I thought she was interesting. Like we didn't see
liked her.
too much of her, but I mean she was interesting in what we saw on the show.
Yeah,
And
I think that a lot of the new characters, I don't know, I'm kind of hit and miss with them. I don't know. Like I liked Tala, I did. I liked Tala and the way
I guess
that
while we're
she.
talking about new characters, what did you think of Kumail Nanjiani's character, the fake Jedi?
I liked him because he was kind of he doesn't have a lot to do, but he's the he's the comic relief, and I
was.
liked it, and which I like because
See, that's a good amount of goofy. Because
Because
it's goofy in terms of characters, not goofy in terms of plot.
Yeah, and I like that because Kumail Nanjiani is a very funny guy.
He is very funny.
And I thought his character was good, and he wasn't just kind of like this one dimensional. All I want is money.
No, he had a growth. He seen a bit of growth
in that
from him.
episode 2, he is doing the right thing.
Yeah.
He's getting these people out. He just wants to take their money.
Yeah.
All right. So I liked the fact that he wasn't all good or all bad. He was kind of like what do you call it? Chaotic good.
Yeah.
You know, which is
Exactly.
yeah, this idea of neutral good or chaotic good. He's the latter.
He's doing the right thing in his own selfish way.
Exactly. So that's what I liked, and he's not a massive part of the show. So however you feel about him, you can't really judge the show on it.
Yeah.
But then you have someone like Tala, right? I really liked the fact that they made her essentially someone who did enlist in the Imperial Academy or the Imperial Navy or what have you, and then she. Was on a mission at one point. I don't remember the specifics or if they mentioned a planet or whatever, but they said that they were going to do a job, and it ended up being essentially the execution of several Force-sensitive families.
Yeah.
Right. And by the time she realized what it was, there was no way to stop it, and she had to witness these brutal killings, and that's when she turned when she turned coat to the Empire and ended up joining this kind of the path thing.
I do love seeing ideas of early Rebel Alliance, and you do run kind of into a problem where you can't have a major force or a major Rebel Alliance like push for anything, but these idea of rebel cells and like small groups that are each fighting in their own way against the Empire.
That's the thing. I mean,
like kind of adds a hope to the idea.
When she started talking about the path the very first time in episode 3, I really thought they were setting up the whole rebellion idea.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't crazy.
I don't think it really was in this.
No, it wasn't.
No.
I wasn't crazy about the idea that was where it was going, because the rebellion's not supposed to exist yet. All right.
Varying degrees of it. Probably the earliest example of the rebellion in some form would be the Free Ryloth movement with like what's his name. The
Cham
Syndulla, and then like other early examples on with like rebels and stuff.
Yeah.
It really
But that's the
doesn't
thing-
start becoming an organization until about 4 or 5
But we've
years
seen it, is
before.
what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't want to see more of it. It's been explored.
Yeah, that's
and,
true. Yeah,
and it's
we
still
have
being
gotten a lot.
and it's still being explored. We're going to see it more in Bad Batch season 2. We're going to
Yeah.
see it in Andor. God, there's so much to talk about.
There's a lot of Star Wars.
when we have a chance. Trailers and all those sorts of things.
Definitely.
But no, this wasn't anything to do with the rebels. This is very kind of Jedi driven. All right, it's essentially kind of an underground railroad of people who believe in what the Jedi stood for, that are trying to who are trying to do right by them. And an Easter egg that we were kind of led into by in this particular scene, Quinlan Vos.
Yes, that was a fun.
That was awesome. I
Yeah.
love Quinlan Vos, and we know that Obi-Wan and Quinlan Vos know each other because they hunt down Zero the Hutt together in season 3.
do.
That part on Nal Hutta where Cad Bane tries to kill them both.
Yeah, no, I definitely did like that mention. In fact, it got quite prominence, and like Obi-Wan himself was like Quinlan Vos. But there were lots.
I'd love to see because Quinlan Vos is one of my favorite background
He's
Star
very
Wars
good.
characters. If we got like a Quinlan Vos show that was driven around this, because she said, he helps now and again.
Yeah,
which
he's clearly about.
If you saw a Quinlan Vos show that was very driven around this idea of guiding younglings or young Force sensitive children to safety, I watched the shit out of that.
I do think that if any Jedi is clearly going to be still around, still surviving, and still making a difference, despite how dangerous it is, Quinlan Vos is definitely one of the more likely options, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because he was never really one to follow the rules, be it as a Jedi, and then in the days of the Empire, I very much doubt he's just going to sit back and let it happen. Like, he's going to be trying to do things to the last moment of his breath, I feel like.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, Quinlan Vos, as far as his Force sensitivity, I'm not sure. I know that there is a word or like a definition for his Force abilities. He's kind of like
his Force seeking,
his Aragorn powers.
Yeah, exactly. The Ranger. Yeah,
he can he can. I believe they're referred to as Force echoes.
Something like that.
Yeah, he can touch something and he can feel its history.
Yeah.
All right. So the fact that he has those powers definitely explains why he could survive something like Order 66. He would have seen it coming.
He would have been a dangerous Inquisitor too if they had have turned him.
Absolutely, that's very true. Oh my god, I didn't even think about that. That's an amazing thought.
That'd be an interesting. Again, we always love this idea of Star Wars what if stories. Like, that'd be so much fun. Dude, a Star Wars what if story if he turned Inquisitor, like that'd be such a weird, like
Jedi would be
unique,
screwed.
interesting story. Yeah.
So anyway, let's get back into episode 4.
Yes.
So there were. I'm not saying that there were parts of it that I didn't like. As again, the Obi-Wan parts were cool, like in the hallway, and that kind of thing. Now, another thing that I found kind of really odd, was the part where they meet up with these new people, and I'm blanking on the name of the kind of leader of this of path group, Ice Cube's son.
I can't remember.
I wish I had my phone.
We'll
here
never
or something.
know.
Yeah. Riken, or I can't remember.
Yeah, Roken or something.
Roken, that's the one. So their whole group, and then those two people who come in on the T-47 airspeeders, right? There's that moment where... exactly. There's that moment where Reva shoots one of them down, all right? She shoots down...
Well, she throws a crate at
She shoots down Wade.
in classic...
Right? Who the hell is Wade? And the weirdest part is that, they get back to the ship and they go, where's Wade? And they go...
He didn't make it.
He didn't make it. And then there's like this really emotional moment where that girl sits down and kind of like reminisces maybe on the times that her and Wade spent together. We have no idea who these people are.
No. See, they're going to release a comic book or a book about that, which we'll learn in the past. You can they'll explain it.
What I'm curious about is that there's this like emotional moment that's supposed to resonate with us that they devote time to. They give her like a reaction shot when his ship gets blown up. They give her like, a good, 20 seconds of time once they get back to that ship where she's like mourning. But we don't know who these people are.
Exactly.
Right? So you're just wasting time.
Because and I definitely think they did kind of again when they kill what's her name in episode 5?
Tala. That one
which
felt
made
bad.
more sense because we've actually seen her in the show.
Exactly. That death felt like it had a lot of weight, especially when, and another one of my...
You do have to be careful about like deaths in storytelling are like, there's so much, you have to be very careful around them in terms of they can feel completely pointless or they can feel like they're just not happening at all and the stakes are removed. So
and that's and Wade felt
has
like
both problems.
Wade felt like both of those. Exactly.
Yeah, in terms of one, why did no one that we knew about die? And two, why are they focusing so much on the death of someone we know no one about? Like,
he had like one line back at the base, but Tala's definitely had a little bit more depth. This and may the force be with you.
Exactly.
The fact that she was kind of, they set it up to essentially be like she has felt this guilt for the deaths that she feel like that she couldn't stop, to the point where she feels like giving her life is kind of her repenting for the sins that she feels like she has been brought on upon herself. I did also like Ned B, the droid.
Before you get on that, one, again, emotionally, I think it was great. However, she kills herself during the explosive and knocks out all the guys and like stops them from escaping to them. But clearly it didn't do anything because Obi-Wan can still open the door when he goes out towards there. Like, what's the point of like her doing this exploding thing if it doesn't destroy the way... Like, if the door still works, the stormtroopers, yes, it clears them. There's still clearly hundreds of them there. They just open the door and hold it. Like, I don't know. It did feel like very strange for her to have massive sacrifice only for Obi-Wan to be like, all right, cool, I'm going out there anyway. And
her death was purely so that they could get... Like they could gain a little bit of ground.
Yeah,
her death wasn't to win the whole thing. No. It was just so that they could buy themselves a little bit more time. That does kind of undercut her death a little bit. But I still like the way it was done.
I agree.
Also, this is
again
a nitpick. May the force be with you. She ignites that thermal detonator. I thought she would like throw it back or something. No, she kind of just holds it there and expects that the blast radius will take them all out.
I mean, it was pretty powerful, the blast, but I feel like it is. I had the assumption was it clearly takes out the stormtroopers, but more importantly, it like caved the building down or closed the doors or something to stop the stormtroopers from getting to them. But yeah, that didn't happen. So I don't know. It did feel like a bit of a fruitless death. I don't know. Kind of like what's the example? I can't remember, but like an example of like someone trying to like sacrifice themselves for it only to be like didn't do anything. I feel like there was a Star Wars example for that. Can't remember.
So that kind of leads us, and again, let's lead into episode 5.
Yeah.
And now up until the point...
one thing we did forget to miss.
Yes.
Probably the most earth-shattering moment of the entire
Oh my God.
show. My boy.
Terrace Hanube.
On the day of you giving me the gift
Literally,
of his lightsaber.
the week that I gave you that. The week of his death is confirmed. I never had a lot of hope that an old guy like him got out of Order 66, but I at least... No, the ambiguity of it gave me hope.
It confirmed what was highly suspected, and
I always thought maybe he was doing what he did when he was at the Jedi Temple. Maybe he was helping younglings, protecting them, whatever.
You would assume something like that.
No, he's very dead. But at least the good thing is the thing that I liked is the fact that room is huge, right? So they've clearly been filling it for a long time, and based on the fact that he's the first one that Obi-Wan finds, he's only been added recently.
So they were adding him from the start and kept going further and further. Either way, he's at the front prominence.
You can assume that maybe he survived for like 8 or 9 years.
Maybe. I'd like
That's how I like to think of it.
I like to hope that he did, as his job was like training. When we last saw him, he was training younglings. Yeah, hopefully he did try and help some of his others. Like if there was going to be any Jedi who wasn't going to just hide away for like the next 20 years or whatever and whatnot, it would be Terrace Nube. He would be out there trying to help younglings escape and do what he can to do it. So
Yeah.
as much as the confirmation of his passing is very tragic as my favorite Jedi, it was interesting to see him again. In fact, seeing him in live action, however form that is, it was interesting.
I did, and I did like the fact that they essentially.
I didn't recognize a single other Jedi though that they showed.
No, I will tell you something that I saw kind of online after that episode aired, which cut me to my core.
Yeah.
Is I saw this thing that was like Obi-Wan must have been just praying beyond hope that he didn't find Ahsoka.
Yeah,
right.
That would have been
because there's.
I mean, presumably he should have still known and
there's such
recognized
horror there's such horror in his eyes, and I like to think that's because he was so terrified that he would find Ahsoka. Yeah, because he doesn't know what happened to her.
Yeah, he doesn't know what happened to her. Like as I was saying, obviously he probably did recognize and know personally a lot of the Jedi in there, but definitely Ahsoka and Anakin were the ones he worked with.
Yeah, well, they don't show us a lot of recognizable Jedi, do they?
No, I didn't.
We only see Terrace Nube and a Jedi youngling.
Yeah,
the rest of them didn't even look like Jedi. They kind of looked like just people.
They were different. I mean, they could have just been force sensitive people because they've been shown that they're hunting down anyone force sensitive. But yeah, and obviously a lot of the major Jedi that we know have been shown how they die, be it like in the Order 66 montage, be it like after the fact, them dying in Clone Wars, be it what's her name? One who dies all over and over again. Damn it, the joke.
Shark T.
Damn it, I was going to do a Shark T joke about being shown Shark T dying 7 times, like whatever it is. So like they weren't exactly, it wasn't going to be a big reveal if they'd be like, oh look, it's Ayla Secura, like we already know she's dead. But I think definitely, certainly for us big Star Wars fans, having Terrace Nube being up there was certainly the biggest like shocking thing they probably could have done.
The gasp literally made the people who are like my family think that something was terribly wrong. I'm like, no, it's fine. One of my favorite characters is dead.
It shooketh me to my core.
It did. Shooketh me to my core. You texted me that.
Yeah, I did.
Because when I said to you, because I watched episode 4 before you did, I said, there's something in this episode that is
right for us. Specifically put in there just to screw us.
Exactly. And then about a few hours later, you texted me, Terrace Nube, no!
Yeah.
And you said, that's what you said. I'm shooketh to my core.
Which is why episode 4 is the worst episode, specifically for that reason. And
exactly. It is the worst episode, but if we want to think of it more like for a biased reason, yes, because they confirmed Terrace Nube's death.
Okay.
But let's get into something that's much better, which is episode...
Yeah, mixed opinions. For a good start, had a bit of a detriment, but episode 5 and episode 6, my favorite part of the show.
Episode 5 and 6 is some of the best Star Wars I've seen in years.
Exactly.
So well done. Let's talk about it. Well, first of all, Obi-Wan and Reva, they're meeting at the door. Yeah. All right. I loved the idea that Reva was never on their side. She was only, kind of, on their side so that she could get close to Vader and build a relationship with him only to eventually kill him. Yeah. I thought that was great. And the idea that they set that up, also, I just get it. A very silly thought that I had during episode 5 is when she said, where were you when he was killing my friends? I was riding a giant space lizard chasing after a spider droid thing on a unicycle.
Exactly.
Prequels.
He was very busy. He was busy.
He was very busy. He was riding, I don't remember what they're called, but it was a big space lizard.
Where was Gondor when Order 66? Where was Gondor?
Yeah. So that's that was literally all I could think of when she said, where were you when he was killing my friends? And I was thinking about him chasing after Grievous on his fucking lizard.
Well, I mean, there's a pretty obvious thing. Like, she blames, obviously, Anakin, but blames Obi-Wan because he was his Panakin. Well,
Panakin.
That was what? Padawan. Anakin was a Padawan. Yeah. So she blames him, presumably, for him turning. Like, does she even? I think she even mentions it, right? She even says he was your
Padawan. Yeah, exactly.
So,
and that's completely founded.
Yeah.
Because
it was everyone's fault.
Well, I mean, and that's something that I like.
Kind of.
That's something that I like about what I think was the best part of episode 5, which was the flashbacks.
Yeah.
And not only do I love the flashbacks because it's awesome and we get to see Ewan and Hayden together again fighting in prequels era Star Wars. Exactly. But every single because they break it up. All right, that flashback.
Also, it was his he was still a Padawan. He had his little rat tail.
Yeah. So that flashback is kind of split up and separated all throughout the episode. And as the different stages of that fight
Yes.
kind of
Reflect,
act
mirror.
as footnotes for what's going on in present day.
I do love
and
that when
my favorite instance of that was a part where essentially what happened was Obi-Wan gets kind of disarmed, or Anakin gets the upper hand in the fight, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he says, your need for victory, Anakin, it blinds you, right? And then we cut to Vader storming into the little facility that they're hiding in, and he does that amazing force pull of the ship, which is one of the best Vader moments we've ever seen. The fact that he was
brutal uses of the force.
No effort. It was easy for him,
Yeah.
right? He rips it down, he tears it apart, but they're not in the ship.
No.
They were in the ship that was literally right in front of his eyes, that he couldn't see because all he could see was the ship that was taking off in front of him, because his need for victory blinds him.
Exactly.
Right? And that's why they edited the fight, the flashback fight the way they did, is because they made it so that the part that we're seeing right before what's happening in the present day,
reflects
it pays off.
I do love it when they have...
which is great. So that part where he says your need for victory blinds you, and then it cuts to that, that is some of the best, most genius writing that Star Wars has faced. I remember thinking when we were watching Mandalorian season 2, that idea of it's that episode where him and Bill Burr's character Mayfeld try to rescue Baby Yoda on that planet where they kind of have to dress up in the Mud Troopers outfits and that kind of thing. Is that I remember Mayfeld talking about something along the lines of you just wait how quickly your rules change when you get desperate.
Yeah.
All right. And then what happens later on in that episode is that essentially, because they are impersonating prisoners, impersonating stormtroopers, there's a part where the TIE fighters say, where the TIE fighters save them. And as a result, we end up thinking, oh, yay, great, everything's over there. But no, they just killed these poor farmers that live on this planet. All right. So what's happening is what we're seeing in that show is causing our rules to change. That's the best thing that that's the best thing that a screenplay can do. It can actually get the audience invested in what the characters are going through. All right. So not only are Mando's rules changing because he needs to get the kid back.
Yeah.
Our rules are changing because of what we want the characters in the show to do.
Yeah.
All right.
Parallels. Exactly.
That's that's why Mandalorian is so well written, especially season 2, and that episode is one of my favorites in that show.
I do love it when the flashbacks of it just like have like tying in, like it's not just a whole flashback in the show, is where they link it to it. Like everything that's happening is a past, and the position they were in still is affecting that, especially with how much this show is about the past affecting them in the present, and
Absolutely.
how much Obi-Wan's past and Anakin's past. And so that was definitely a great moment of episode 5.
Yeah. So that even in the first part of the duel, when Anakin says mercy doesn't defeat the enemy, master. So and immediately after that, we cut to the fact that Anakin is showing very little mercy. He says, lock down the facility, do not stop the attack. So that bleeds into that, and the whole your need for victory, Anakin, it blinds you, bleeds into him stopping a ship that had no one on it.
No, exactly.
The one that did have everyone on it was right in front of his face. But because he has such a need for victory that still remains from his Anakin Skywalker days, that's why the editing of that episode was amazing, and the writing of that episode was amazing, and the way that flashback duel ends is you are an amazing warrior, but your need to prove yourself is your undoing. All right, and that's exactly what happens to Vader in present day, and that's why the way this episode was written and edited together, a masterclass in filmmaking, TV making, whatever. These are movie level.
Definitely.
TV. These are movie level TV shows.
Decisions that were made in terms of the plot was like very strong at that. I do think one thing we were mentioning specifically in the 6th episode is how beautiful some parts of the show is, especially noticing in the final episode.
Oh, we're going to get into that right after I mention also one of my favorite parts of that flashback was that Anakin is something that kind of was slightly touched on in episode 2, but was never fully elaborated on because we've got other stuff to do. Is the idea that Anakin was almost very desperate for Obi-Wan's approval, all throughout their kinship. Your weapon's gone, it's over, and that kind of thing. And all Obi-Wan says is, your need for victory, it blinds you. He's being, as Anakin told Padme in episode 2, overly critical. All right, so.
Yeah, that's true.
This flashback...
that's just the nature of how the Jedi were. Is like they're so convinced that their way of thinking is correct that like they are like overly critical.
And Obi-Wan, you know, almost unintentionally was a product of that system.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and that's why I loved it's you know, connecting to stuff that was talked about in episode 2, the fact that Anakin saw Obi-Wan as being overly critical, that he didn't listen, that he didn't feel like a good fit to him as a master. And that's why, I mean, this is something that will be discussed ad nauseum in the Star Wars community, that Qui-Gon Jinn would have been a much better master for Anakin. And the fact that Obi-Wan ended up as his master played a big part in you know, why Anakin went the way he did.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, you know, I imagine that if Qui-Gon, because Qui-Gon was not a typically Jedi-ish Jedi, right? He went against the Council constantly.
He also had he had a lot of faith in
he had a lot of faith in Anakin.
Obi-Wan.
He was a good person and he had good intentions regardless of what the Jedi's agenda was. So I feel like, you know, adult Anakin, I mean, look at it this way. I feel like Anakin would have felt very comfortable coming to Qui-Gon about Padme.
Yeah.
I feel like he would have felt comfortable mentioning it to him, and I feel like a Qui-Gon would have been supportive of that he would have been able to nurture those feelings and nurture, you know, the feelings that he had for Padme without letting it kind of detract from him as a person. All right. The fact that Anakin didn't feel like he could share those things with Obi-Wan is why it kept bottled up. That's why Palpatine could take advantage of him, and that's why he became Darth Vader. So it's why, you know, sliding doors, Qui-Gon needed to die for this whole thing to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of Qui-Gon and Vader and Obi-Wan, let's get into episode 6.
Episode 6 was a mix of two things. One, giving us everything all the fans wanted, and two, just being a really good episode. I don't know.
Such an amazing hour of Star Wars. It was just...
To clarify,
we
loved it was longer.
To clarify, we literally just watched it.
Yeah,
all right, so it's fresh in our minds. So much to love. All right, it starts out slow as it should. It's setting up everything that's about to happen. All right, and essentially the first thing that we get of any real kind of, you know, concrete thing is Obi-Wan landing on this desolate planet.
Yeah.
Vader follows him in the shuttle, and that fight ensues. And oh my god, what a fight it was! It was
a really interesting, unique planet. Like it was kind of.
I loved its design.
Long spires of stone.
Loved its design,
which really led into the combat of like how they were fighting. Like they were using all the stone around them with the Force. Like that was a really interesting fight and different to the previous and future fights that we have seen with Obi-Wan and Anakin, which I quite like.
Yeah, I like how their fighting styles have visibly changed because Darth Vader is able to more...
While still having parallels to previous parts and the future, which is good.
I loved the fact that in the way that it starts is, have you come to kill me, Obi-Wan?
Yeah.
I will do what I must. That's what Obi-Wan said on Mustafar. That's such a great parallel. And I honestly thought that Vader was going to say, you will try, but he says, then you will die. Yeah. So which is also cool. But yes, the way that the Force was used, the lightsaber action felt so fluid. You know, it didn't feel like, you know, a lot of people have come around on the prequels choreography. I still maintain that there are lots of parts of the choreography in Clone Wars. Sorry, not in Clone Wars. In the prequels that feel very over choreographed.
Yeah,
this felt like
definitely a bit revenge of the Sith.
This felt like the perfect mix. The fight, the lightsaber combat in this episode might be the best live-action lightsaber combat we've ever gotten.
It's pretty good. I especially love the difference in terms of like Vader's was so much more brutal, one hand just kind of like hitting back. Obi-Wan had to he grew into his technique, and as he went further in the fight, he like eventually got back in his stride.
He became more comfortable with it, which is understandable because Obi-Wan is
layers,
slowly reconnecting with the Force as he has done in the last 3 episodes since they last met. And that's why he's so much more skilled, is because he doesn't need to try as hard to conceal everything about Luke and Leia, because he's had some practice with it now.
Yeah.
You know, he's had some time to kind of rebuild himself. You know, which is why I think that the point that we see him in episode 6 makes complete sense. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel rushed. It felt good with what we saw in the story, which was great. I also love the fact that we got the original.
Yeah, he did the pose.
That's how they start. I will do what I must.
Lots of little callbacks and fun references. Another thing, so obviously we see Obi-Wan lose the first part of the fight, but his overconfidence in his victory, again, because he thought pretty much, I've defeated Obi-Wan, I can leave him now.
He buries him in the rocks.
Yeah, rather than fully finishing the job, means that Obi-Wan breaks out of it. He gets the courage that he's been doing for, uses the Force, and has a second part of the fight with a even more brutal than the first part. But this time from Obi-Wan's side, like he's cutting into Anakin.
My favorite part is that the second half of this fight, he sneaks up on Vader the same way he snuck up on him in episode 3, which is awesome. And I honestly thought what was going to happen is that as he was kind of trying to get out of those rocks, right? I thought that's when we were going to hear Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that we were going to have kind of like a Spider-Man Homecoming moment where he's trapped under all this rubble and he has this kind of inner monologue with himself.
Without Qui-Gon,
and he hears him and he hears his master's voice. He says whatever, and that says, rise, Obi-Wan, or something. I don't know.
Yeah, in this he was thinking of like Leia and Luke and how he needed to keep fighting, I think.
And I love that just as much as I would have if we had seen if we had heard Qui-Gon,
which we may or may not have.
Who knows? I don't know. So the fight continues. Obi-Wan wails on Vader, and again, I love the justification as to why he's able to do this.
Yeah.
And we get that justification a little bit later with Vader and the Emperor.
Yeah.
With Ian McDiarmid coming back.
Exactly.
How cool was that?
So good.
Is that
his connection to his past is still a weakness for him.
His connection to his past
and
is his weakness, and the fact
focusing on Obi-Wan
is that ultimately, regardless of how much Darth Vader has taken over, we know that Anakin is not completely gone.
Exactly.
All right. There's a part of Vader that will always see the man who raised him, and that's why he can't. If you think about it, the only reason he kills him in Episode 4 is because Obi-Wan lets him kill him.
Yeah.
So I like to think that there's this idea that Obi-Wan Kenobi is the one person that Vader can never defeat, right? And I love that idea. I love the justification of it. I love the idea that he cannot kill him because of their history. And I completely understood that that's why.
To the same degree as well, like Obi-Wan was just obliterating Vader and probably would have gone in for the kill had it not been for him seeing his eye and realizing, oh, this is Anakin.
That's
I'm
Anakin.
Fighting. This is Anakin I'm fighting.
I love that there's a moment where he sees his eyes.
Yeah.
It's Hayden's eyes. And I told you, I was almost tearing up when he says, Anakin, I'm so sorry.
Exactly.
There was just that amazing moment. It was
very emotional moment. Quite funny how it was just exactly the same as Twilight of the Apprentice from Rebels.
I was going to say, it's Rebels.
It is. It was
Rebels.
just Twilight of the Apprentice again. Oh my goodness.
It's literally the same mask break.
I know. He's
point.
I think it's just like a design flaw of the helmet where it just breaks off at that point. And just
I love that because that part of it breaks in this part, and then about 4 or 5 years later, the exact same thing happens.
Exactly.
So whoever like Darth Vader tech support is back on Mustafar is like, oh, not this crap again.
Yeah, he's probably like, hey guys, just letting you know, this part of the helmet, it's a bit fragile. Maybe fix it. And they're like, yeah, we'll get right on that.
Yeah. So that part where the mask is exposed and we hear a
half as a mix.
It's kind of half and half of James Earl Jones and Hayden, which was amazing. It
was very
right.
good.
There's that part where Obi-Wan, he starts to tear up and he says, I'm so sorry for the part that I played in this. And then
the best moment of the entire episode is he refers to him as Darth.
He refers to him as Darth like in episode 4. We'll get to that shortly. But I want to touch on the idea that Anakin actually says to Obi-Wan, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, that was.
I did.
That was a good moment.
Which is amazing because
I really like
it
that.
really speaks to the idea that Darth Vader does not. He thinks of Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker as two different people.
Yeah.
All right. The fact that he thinks that Darth Vader, like Yoda said in Episode 3, the boy you trained, gone he is, consumed by Darth Vader.
Yeah.
So even Yoda thinks of Darth Vader as this kind of ethereal Sith-like force.
Yeah, and Obi-Wan is just completely convinced that
kind of
gone.
stole Anakin's body, if you would think of it like that. So that
what I said was true from a certain point of view.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that part of it where, that part where he's saying that what you see of Hayden's face, there's a good mix of the glow of Vader's red lightsaber and Obi-Wan's blue lightsaber.
Lighting
this dichotomy of the light and the dark
was very important.
So well done. Such amazing visual storytelling.
Yeah.
And
the
then
filmmaking in this fight, in this episode in particular, was outstanding.
Yep. And then that part where Obi-Wan concedes that he can't bring Anakin back. The backstory for why he says he's more machine now than man. He doesn't believe Anakin's there anymore. Yep. That's why he says, then my friend is truly dead, right? Which I also love is a reference to what Luke says in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Because when they're having that chat before they go see the Emperor on Endor, when he says, it's too late for me, son, The Emperor is your master now. And before he gets taken away by the stormtroopers, he says, then my father is truly dead. All right. So the fact that they kind of mirror each other was beautiful. But the best part of this kind of visual storytelling thing is right after Obi-Wan says, then my friend is truly dead. You cut back to Anakin/Vader's face. The blue glow of the blue lightsaber diminishes completely, and it's just this piercing red across his face, and you can see the brutal evil in those eyes.
The effect as well of how it was cut and his face peering through.
So
the
well
red
done.
gore
And
on it.
Obi-Wan just leaves him there because he can't kill him. But he knows that because Anakin he knows that Anakin isn't there anymore, but he still can't bring himself to kill him because he'll always see the boy he raised under that mask, which I love that.
And from that moment on, he stops referring to him as Anakin or whatnot and just goes to
That was
Darth.
the best part.
Because obviously the justification of it, besides from the fact that it was done before they knew he was Darth wasn't his first name, is that he only sees him as a Dark Lord. He only sees him as evil.
That's
so
why
Darth,
the actual reason is because back when Episode 4 came out, it was not decided that Luke and Leia were siblings, and that Luke and Leia were Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker. Yeah,
His Daddy Skywalker.
Exactly. So when Alec Guinness says only a master of evil Darth, he's doing it because it was written as if Darth was his first name. First name Darth, last name Vader.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah,
There are arguments to be made, like the
that you look back at it. Yeah.
There are arguments to be made that George did know because the Latin meaning of Darth Vader is Dark Father.
But
I don't know.
Actually, no, not Latin. So I think it's.
Is it Arabic?
It's Dutch, and it's close to it. Like Darth is a made-up word. Like that isn't in any language. Or even if it is, it was like an unknown connection.
Right.
And Vater, I think in Dutch or German, is father. But it's
Right.
That's the one that kind of is. I'm pretty sure it was more of an accidental coincidence.
But the idea that they need to bring it, because if Obi-Wan still thought the way he does now in Episode 4, that moment where they meet in Episode 4, it's just them.
Yeah.
All right. You could imagine that in universe, he would have said only a master of evil Anakin or only a master of evil Vader or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, so the idea that they are setting that whole Darth thing up by essentially saying that this is the moment where Obi-Wan fully accepted.
Yeah, the moment that he stopped believing Anakin existed.
That Anakin was dead.
Yeah.
That Anakin was dead and he had been consumed by Darth Vader, and that's all that will ever be.
Exactly.
Is he said goodbye, Darth.
Yeah.
It was a little bit.
They had to do it.
There's always a part of it that will make me laugh.
So goofy.
Because I know that I'm going to be rewatching this episode over and over again over my lifetime.
Yeah, you're never going to not laugh.
There's always a part of me that's going to make me snicker. And I'm because again, we just watched it, so we don't know anything about how this episode has been perceived by the Star Wars community.
We could be completely the minority. Everyone hated it.
We could be in the complete minority, and everyone could hate and think that it was so cringy that he called him Darth. But I don't know. I think people will like.
They had to do it. Yeah.
I think people will like it.
I mean, it is kind of cringy, but it's very goofy. But they had to do it because, like, you don't want to like. Obviously, this was made after the prequels, which were made after the original trilogy. So everything hinges on that first film, A New Hope, and so many things have changed since then, but that is the essence of what Star Wars was. And so you can't really change much. As much as George Lucas loves to think you can like go back and change things, it is what it is. And so that was an important part.
Yeah. Okay. So let's
wrap up our thoughts.
Wrap up this discussion with like the last part of Episode 6, which is the fact that Reva's story is concluded. She goes after Luke after seeing that transmission in Episode 5.
All right. It's kind of
again, I feel like it would have served the story a little bit more if she had died in Episode 5. I think it would have served her story better. It would have made her a more tragic character. But I did like the idea that she lets Luke go because she can't do it. She can't do what Vader did to her friends. And I love that moment where she's about to strike Luke down and she sees flashes of herself. All right. And she realizes she is becoming Vader.
Yeah.
All right. Which is something that I thought was really well done. And that moment where she just breaks down to Obi-Wan, I couldn't do it. Am I like him? And she says, no, you're not, because you stopped yourself.
Exactly.
All right. You're what, your destiny is what you make it, essentially. And Reva survives, and she just goes off, and who knows? She drops a lightsaber, presumably buries it in the desert somewhere.
Exactly. Add another one of those to the collection.
How many lightsabers are buried in the Tatooine sand?
We're up to at least 3, but I swear there's more.
By 34 BBY, Rise of Skywalker, so many.
There's a number of them.
We never really find out what happened to Obi-Wan's lightsaber after he disappeared. You can assume that it was destroyed by Vader. Who knows?
Is it different to the one that he has in A New Hope?
No, he keeps the same one from Revenge of the Sith onwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
we know that Luke and Leia's lightsabers end up there. We know that Reva's ends up there.
Exactly.
I don't know.
It's a fun story.
Ray will probably bury it
is
in the
what it is.
sand in the sequels.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if rather than going out and slaughtering all these Jedi, they should have General Grievous just got a metal detector.
I love that
Tatooine
meme.
Dune sand.
Yeah,
like,
where
find
General
them.
Grievous is just using a metal detector upon the Tatooine sand. That was
Exactly.
amazing.
Wild.
Now, let's get into the final scenes of Episode 6.
Biggest part.
Let's get into, first of all, let's start out with Obi-Wan back on Alderaan.
Yeah.
Leia is reunited with her family, which
That
is
was
wonderful, and then they have this beautiful moment together where Obi-Wan admits that
that
he
was-
know her.
with
He
the
did know her
parents.
parents,
Yeah.
and she talks about what traits she gets from each of them. She gets her tenacity and her leadership and her courage from Padme,
Yeah,
and
like
her
passion or something,
her passion and her bravery and her fearlessness. We could get to that both from both of them, I guess, but from Anakin.
Yeah.
Obviously, she doesn't mention Padme and Anakin by name, but she
Yeah.
mentions that
You get your evilness and your ability to slaughter younglings from your dad.
and I can't keep backtracking because we have to wrap this up. We've been going
Yeah.
for so long now, but I want to go back
There's too much to say,
I want to
yeah.
go back to quickly Episode 3, where we actually start to learn where Leia has that moment where she asks Obi-Wan, "Are you my real
Yeah.
father?" And then he talks about that idea of the fact that the Jedi are taken from their families when they're very young, but he still gets flashes of his backstory.
Yeah.
The fact that he had a mother and a father, that he had a brother, Obi-2.
You just wanted to do that. I was not expecting that.
I
at
bring
all.
that up because this is a fun fact. Ewan McGregor's brother. Yay. Obi-2 Kenobi coming soon. So we need to use those sound bites more. So the idea that I just bring that up because there's a fun fact where Ewan McGregor's real life brother is he's a pilot in the Air Force.
Oh, really?
And his call sign is Obi-2.
Oh, OB2, that's wild.
Can you believe that?
That's fantastic.
There you go. That implies that it was a joke. It wasn't a joke. Yeah.
Hello there.
I'm just going to go crazy on the sound bites.
Oh, I've reminded you about it now. No, we've got to quick rush. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So back to Episode 6. We have that amazing moment with Luke and with Leia and Obi-Wan, which I loved, and it really sets up this idea that if you ever need me,
Yeah.
I'll be there for you or something like that.
Setting up where we're going to be in the New
It
Hope.
stands to reason that doesn't happen, but who knows?
To an extent. I mean, Bale definitely thinks maybe it's time to go call him my Jedi friend or whatever in Rogue One.
Yeah.
So.
Now, possibly the best scene in the show.
Yeah. I know the part you were hyping for.
The last part of the episode where Obi-Wan comes to the Lars homestead,
Yep.
and he essentially concedes based on what he's seen, what Leia has been through. He kind of begins to understand to Owen.
He needs to be raised as a boy.
He needs to be raised as a boy. He doesn't need me. I don't need to. He doesn't need to be wrapped up in the baggage that I bring with me. He's okay here, and I know that you guys are more than capable. And then as he's leaving, Owen says, "Do you want to meet him?"
Yeah.
And we get Obi-Wan and Luke's first meeting,
And of course.
and of course, we hear,
Hello there.
and Michael and I went nuts.
they were always going to do it. I mean, they had
I
to.
honestly thought they weren't going to.
I mean,
honestly thought they couldn't blend it in, and they did. They did it perfectly.
Like, with how much of the show is
as he
built
was-
on the hype of prequel fans, they were always going to
As he was walking up, I was like, he's going to say it.
gonna say
He's going to say it. He's going to say it. And then he
yeah.
did, and we went nuts,
was
which is
hilarious.
amazing. So
Very,
I love
very, very funny.
So I love the fact that they meet. I love the fact that he gives him the
what we get
sky.
as well, which is-
I love the fact that he gives him the skyhopper,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And then that final scene.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan's escape. Where
I
Obi-Wan's
didn't think that they were going to bring him
emerging into the Junlan Wastes, back
Yeah.
into wherever he's going next, because he packs up his cave.
Yeah, he's about to go.
So you can assume that he goes into the hut that he gets to in Episode 4. Maybe
Yep.
he's renting a new place from that guy
Yes.
with the beard.
Exactly. That guy came back. After
Yes,
that.
and then we see Qui-Gon Jinn.
Mr. Jim.
We see Liam Neeson return as Qui-Gon Jinn, and my heart, honestly, I grabbed your arm and I was in disbelief. I don't even care that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I love.
Don't think about it.
Don't think about it. Yes, because canon wise,
It made emotional sense to the story, which
It
is
made
the
it-
most important part.
when I was talking earlier about the fact that I don't care about little nitpicky things if it serves the story and has the emotional weight that's supposed to come with it. All right, I can let things go. Kind of like the whole Obi-Wan not being on Tatooine the entire time.
Yeah,
I don't care
exactly.
about it because the story required it.
Yeah.
All right. This type of ending and the fact that Obi-Wan was trying to reach out to him the entire time, it made complete sense that Qui-Gon would appear to him, which made sense. So for those of you who don't know, in Clone Wars Season 6, essentially what happens is Qui-Gon reveals to Yoda through the voice
Yep.
that his training to become a Force ghost was incomplete. He only got to the point where you can manifest yourself as a voice. All right, and then in season 6 of Clone Wars, he teaches Yoda the full extent of that training, which is why Yoda can appear as a voice and as a ghost, which is why he gives Obi-Wan that training, and that's why they can appear as Force ghosts, but Qui-Gon can't.
Yeah.
Obviously, this negates that, but I don't care at all.
Maybe everyone was just tripping, just saw him as a
Who
vision.
knows? Who knows? Because we did see Qui-Gon as a body on Mortis in Clone Wars, so that might be something like that.
The
might
rules
be
of the Force kind of bend the things.
that might be a cool workaround. He got a hall pass from
Exactly.
he got a hall pass from the Force gods. You know, from the 6 Force people
Wizards.
from the 6 space
wizards.
Force emotion wizards that guide Yoda through his training in season 6.
I need to rewatch that. I don't remember nothing about that arc.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched it.
But
yeah,
definitely to the emotion of the character and
to see them, to see Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan together.
The idea
again,
that
it
he wasn't ready to see him prior to this, because he's been searching for Qui-Gon throughout episode 1, throughout episode 5, throughout it, and then finally he was ready to see his master.
It just melted my heart. We haven't
very
seen
good.
Liam Neeson in
Liam Neeson.
We haven't seen Liam Neeson as Liam Neeson.
Yeah, as Liam Neeson. He hasn't appeared in 10 years.
Because we've seen him animated and we've heard his voice, of course, but we haven't seen Liam Neeson on screen since 1999.
Yeah.
It's been 23 years. Right, that's amazing. So, it's just I can't tell you how much I love the ending to this show.
It was
and
very good.
retroactively, the fact that they pulled off the ending of this show so well, it actually makes the parts that are not so good about this show better.
It definitely changed my overall opinion of the show.
Because when we go back and watch those episodes, they're not going to be great, but we know what's coming.
Yeah.
And the fact that we get Reva's backstory, for instance, right, in episode 5, all right, now we're going to be able to go back and watch episode 1 knowing that, and it's going to emphasize our viewing, which I think is very exciting.
Most importantly, it starts off really interesting with characters that we want to see, and it bookends it with a satisfying way for the characters, the arc of how they go forward. And so because of that, I think it was a huge success. I loved it. I thought the show was great. Stumbled a bit, but...
Exactly. It stumbled a bit in the middle, which is why I started to get worried. I was thinking if these... I remember saying distinctly, I was saying to a person at work, because I got a colleague of mine who's a big Star Wars fan, and I said, after episode 4, episodes 5 and 6 better blow my mind. And
did they, Jack?
God, did they?
Yeah.
And retroactively, it made the entire show better.
Definitely.
So, yes, it's not a perfect gem in the Star Wars chronology, but it has so much good going for it. Ewan McGregor is he might be my favorite thing in Star Wars now. You
always loved
after this show
Kenobi.
specifically, he might be just the best thing that's ever happened to Star Wars. He's just such a gift to the Star Wars mythos. He's so good at acting. Hayden Christensen, Vader, amazing. Leia, young Leia was great. Tala was good. Haja was a good character and a great character. Reva, I definitely came around on towards the end. I thought the music was beautiful.
he came back.
John Williams' score for Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan theme.
Yeah.
The reason that John Williams wanted to write it was because he never got to write a theme for Obi-Wan, which is amazing. I'm not sure if the rest of the music that's played throughout the show
see if it's as
is
iconic.
all John Williams, but I know that the main theme is
definitely.
him. And that's another thing I guess I could say is that, and then we'll slowly wind this down, is that I was hoping to hear a little bit more of the Imperial March with Vader. Because we only heard it once in episode 6 after he has that chat with the Emperor, which was interesting. Which, we got it, so I don't mind, but, I would like to hear it more.
Yeah.
The Imperial March. So anyway, those are my final thoughts, Michael. What do you think?
Yeah, as I said before, it gave me the emotions I wanted to watch. Just simply, I was so excited leaning into it. And I definitely, even the parts of it that were a bit weaker, I still found a lot of fun in the show. And it just recaptured my love of the best parts of the prequels and the characters and how it is this fun origin to the way we know the characters by the original trilogy. And it passed on all levels for me. And so I think it's a classic and very important part of the arc for these characters. Now that if I'm ever wanting to do I want to watch the Star Wars original trilogy or Star Wars Saga, specifically maybe in prequels and original trilogy, I'm very tempted to slip in at least some of my favorite parts of the show into it.
100%. This not only improves the later parts of the prequels, but gives a little bit more depth to what we see in episode 4, which I think is exactly what this show needed to do. Ewan McGregor said himself that he wanted to really, bridge the character arcs of Anakin and Obi-Wan between episodes 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what this show did. So overall, Obi-Wan Kenobi, I really, really enjoyed it. So if we were going to be rating it, I'd give it like an 8.
Yeah, probably around that. It's a breath of fresh air to what was originally for me, because I've been loving Star Wars throughout the Disney Plus shows, but certainly a little bit to a point, it's starting to be a bit like, are they doing shows about like anything? But this definitely reminded me that no, there are definitely stories that I want to see that we just haven't been able to see, especially in long form TV shows format. And the fact that this, in my opinion, had hit those most important parts for me is I'm excited for the future where they go from here.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Season 2?
We'll see. Like, I don't know if it needs it.
I know
I'd love it.
that it's a limited series, but I can't help but thinking there were so many setups at the end of this episode.
They're setting up for A New Hope.
Vader says to the Emperor, "We will find him," and that part where
they don't. Yeah,
Qui-Gon says to Obi-Wan, "Come on, we've got a long way to go."
Yeah,
it sets up the idea that Qui-Gon is going to conduct Obi-Wan's Force Ghost training.
Yeah,
which I would love to see.
Again, I would love. I wouldn't say no. I think it would be great.
But I've heard,
there's room for it. I don't know if it's necessary, but hey,
no.
I say no to that show.
It's not like I can't live without it.
Yeah.
If this is all we get, I'm more than happy. But there's also been a lot of buzz around it just in the community.
It's been huge
because I mean, it's just rumors, of course, but I've seen rumors all across the internet that season 2 has already been greenlit. I don't believe it, but like the fact that this show, in its first day, was watched by like over 15 million people in less than an hour.
Yeah,
crazy. It to this day, it is now the most popular Disney Plus series since the show started, as far as views and number of watches.
Yeah.
It's the most popular show they've ever done. So as far as,
their incentive to do it.
As far as like a creative Lucasfilm decision, it's a very good financial and production-wise explanation to do more.
Yeah.
But if we don't get more, I don't mind. But I'm certainly not going to say no if I find out tomorrow Obi-Wan Kenobi confirmed for season 2.
Yeah, if we want to watch the sequel to Obi-Wan Kenobi, we could watch A New Hope. But
yeah, it's that's true. But also if I would want to see in season 2, I'd want to see all the Obi-Wan Qui-Gon stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And it doesn't seem like. I'm so happy that Liam Neeson came back to play Qui-Gon.
I didn't know if he was going to do it.
I'm not sure if he would do it for an extended run.
That's true.
I'm not
a
sure
whole show.
I'm not sure if he would commit to like a contracted appearance in a show.
Yeah.
Like that was very much a cameo that he would have showed up for like an afternoon.
In the same way that like Han Solo came back for Force Awakens, but I doubt he'll do anything again.
Exactly.
He did have a small cameo.
Harrison Ford will come back for a cameo, not a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
In the same way that we
don't know if he will. He might, but I don't know. Like,
Liam Neeson has said very publicly that he loves Phantom Menace and he loves the role that
he's one of the best parts of it.
That he loves the role he got to play, and he has very fond memories working with George and Ewan and Ahmed Best. So he clearly has fond memories of working in the Star Wars universe. So who knows? Maybe he would say yes that they asked him to do another, an extended version of Qui-Gon again. Mm-hmm. But anyway, guys, that's our view of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I'm really, really happy with what the show has given us.
Exactly.
And I'm so excited for where Star Wars goes next. It's going in all different directions with Mando and Andor and Ahsoka and Bad Batch and Tales of the Jedi and Skeleton Crew, that new show.
Yeah, look, there's so much been announced. We'll have more to go from here.
We'll have to do maybe an episode next week where we talk about all the new stuff and break it down.
I believe so. There's lots of room for us to talk. It's just... It's a great position for us specifically as Star Wars fans and Star Wars podcast people.
It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan now.
It's always a good time to be a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, and we're getting more Bad Batch very soon, so we'll be able to do weekly stuff about that, which is very exciting. But anyway, guys, that's it for now. I really hope you enjoyed our first episode back doing the podcast in a little while.
Yeah.
Again, we've been on like a couple of hiatuses at this point, but that's what happens.
Extraneous life circumstances.
That's what happens when you are young 20-year-olds doing this thing completely on your own while also undertaking uni courses and trying to navigate a pandemic.
It's a passion for us, and so we always strive to, if we really can, we really want to put this out. And so the fact that we've had this opportunity to do this episode today has been really exciting.
I've enjoyed this.
I've had a good time. So thank you all for listening.
And I imagine that it's really long. I'm going to check the time.
If you've stuck us with this whole time, you're a real one out there.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure to find us on Apple Podcasts as well as YouTube. The video version of this, it's available everywhere. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're all there. We're check us out there, and tune in next time for Telling the Odds. Mike.